That's true. That's what we say. Yeah, yeah. Quick question. What's the last part? Do you have the data? I don't. The developer. Okay. What's the margin of error for that? Imagine what's the margin of error for that?
No, this is a session made up of amateur and professional. Come on, find a comfortable spot. Come up towards the front. We'll be cozy. What's that?
Like by like a whole order of magnitude, or by just?
I don't want to say because people will say April said.
April said. What's that hanging out of your shirt? Did your neck break or something?
Doesn't see somebody really popular scheduled against us, you know?
Well, this is now, everybody's been through one workshop, now they want to take a break, check their email, get more coffee, so anyway, lovely to have you all here. My name is Barbara Clinton, I'm on the board of Neighbor to Neighbor, and I live in the Woodbine neighborhood, and we're particularly thrilled to have Tony Gonzalez here, because Tony is a star. You will recognize his voice once he starts talking. So Tony works for WPLN, and he produces the Curious Nashville segment. So part of his job is to look into Metro records, talk to interesting people, figure out questions that people have about Nashville, and figure out the answers. You got questions?
Never done that before.
Sit down. Nice to have you all here. Find a comfortable spot. Relax in here. So, this segment, Digging into Your Neighborhood's History, will be led by Tony. And Tony lives in Laughlin Springs.
That's true,
He's
yes.
also a neighborhood guy. We have Metro's historian here. We have the boy that comes to this anyway, welcome. I think I've said everything I need to say. We're going to, at about 11:20, we're going to finish, and I'll come around and make sure everybody has an opportunity to evaluate the session. So again, come in, sit down, relax, join us for digging into your neighborhood's history. Tony?
Awesome, great. Hey everybody, good morning. I'm really excited to be here, get a little change of pace after this week. So prepare a little presentation. Here's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna share some examples of how I have dug into my neighborhood history and how I do some of this for reporting for WPLN. I'm gonna walk through a bunch of little research tools and ideas that you can use in your work. I also would hope that we could then brainstorm what to do with that material once you've gathered it, like how to present it to your neighbors or to the broader community. And ideally we'll have time to actually kind of act like a little workshop or something. Like if you have I'll have all these kind of online resources pulled up. We could just test them and look for some information that's relevant to your neighborhoods. So that's my hope for today. I do want to say, let's do some little hellos for just a minute. Could everybody just turn to I'm Tony, I'm from Laughlin Springs, I've been there for 11 years. If you don't know who you're sitting with, could everybody just take a minute to say hi and meet somebody who you have not met? Maybe share what neighborhood you're in? All right. I love hearing people describe their neighborhood too, like these landmarks, like, oh, it's sort of by this, by there. I'm kind of a map nerd, so I appreciate overhearing that. Okay, so one other little, I just want to do a kind of like a quick survey to kind of know who's in the room. So we're going to do a little show of hands. Oh, let me make sure I'm getting this to work here. I want to know, just with the show of hands, whether you have heard of the following kind of tools or things that we might talk about. Who knows about the parcel viewer? About half or more. Okay, cool. Has anybody used the Tennessee State Library and Archives digital collections? Show of hands. Okay, about half. Who knows the name Ridley Wills? Only one. Okay, cool. Good to know. How about newspapers.com? Has anybody used newspapers.com for research? A couple? Okay, cool. So that helps me just to know, like, who's all using what a little bit. Those are some of the things we're going to talk about as we go. First, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about myself and share some examples of what I do. So one of the things I do professionally is, I'm a journalist, I'm a reporter. I've been reporting here for 12 years now for the Tennessean and then for Nashville Public Radio. And one of those projects for the past 7 years is Curious Nashville, where we answer questions from the community. And they are very often questions about neighborhoods and neighborhood history. Why is this thing named this way? What's up with that street name? What happened to this building? What was that building? We get all sorts of questions of people just being curious about their surroundings. And one thing I really love about that concept is, like, anybody, old or young, new or native, like, anybody can sort of share in being interested in their neighborhood. And I find that, like, I think we can really build connections and bonds by sharing in our curiosity about the place where we live. I think there's a lot of divisiveness between old guard, new guard kind of stuff, but I think if we can share in being interested in our surroundings, we can often find some really great common ground. So that, I think, really informs some of the Curious Nashville work that we do. Let's see. Oh yeah, here's a quiz. Does anybody know what our Curious Nashville logo is modeled after? It is a sign. Anybody know what neighborhood it's from? It is in the Nations. It is now the Nations Bar. Yes. That's the first group I've ever spoken in front of that got it right away. Typically people think it's like Wendell Smith's or the Loveless. It's not. It's the Nation's Bar. All right. So Curious Nashville, we have we've received more than 1,000 questions in 7 years. We've answered a couple hundred of those, including in our podcast, the Curious Nashville podcast. And we have about 9,000 people who listen to these episodes, which is really heartening to me that it's, that's not a huge audience and it's smaller than our radio audience. But there are enough nerds of us out there who are interested in these sort of quirky local history stories and explanations. I'll share just a couple examples. We did reporting on tunnels. We've actually received many questions about whether there are tunnels beneath our city. In fact, our historian Carol Busey helped me on this story. And it was something that called on me to use maps, to use historical articles, and also to physically go out and look at things, which we will also talk about. A lot of the resources I'm going to share are kind of online tools, but then I will also walk through how great it is to just get out into our world. We had a story about, a question about ornamental trees in a North Nashville neighborhood. There's a bunch of interesting cypress and juniper trees, and some of the neighbors there on Buchanan had actually decided to kind of dig into the research. And our reporter, Damon Mitchell, ended up teaming up with one of the neighbors, and I'm going to just play a little clip of this story.
Cannon started digging for clues that explained the history of the tree. She landed at a floral business that once stood where she now lives. It's the early 1900s. E.S. Pinkert, who was born on a farm south of Murfreesboro, had already spent 9 years as a fireman. and railroad engineer. He decides to move to the city and becomes superintendent of a long-standing Jewish cemetery in North Nashville.
By 1920, I think he had started his own greenhouse here.
Pinkert buys up some land and jumps into the nursery business. He's all about evergreens and shrubs, famously taking ornamentals that bloomed in the Tennessee mountains and growing them in Nashville. He shipped them across the world. Cannon found that Pinkert had a store on West End, but his main operation with 7 greenhouses was right next door to her.
2615 Buchanan back in the 20s and 30s was an evergreen nursery, which puts us where we're standing, because this street wasn't here.
I love when she says this street wasn't here. This is my little pro tip. When you start looking at old maps, a lot of the street names are different, and a lot of the streets aren't there. So you're gonna have to use your geographic wits about you. Anyway, I thought that story was just kind of fun at bringing, that's just a little excerpt of it, bringing a little pocket of our neighborhood to life. I'm gonna play you one more example. The Glendale Park Zoo, the former zoo in suburban Green Hills, where there are still some remnants of this zoo that you can physically go see. And we had a question about that, and we had a reporter named Sarah several years ago put this together. Little excerpt.
7 miles from downtown, the Glendale Park Zoo lay tucked away from the urban life of the early 1900s. It was a weekend escape, filled with animals, of course, but also carnival rides, live music, and vaudeville. And to get there, people had to ride on the old streetcar line.
Half the fun, again, was going out on the train.
That's Andy Lane, who lives where the zoo once was and has studied its history. He's even talked to old-timers who visited back in the day.
And all of a sudden, you would leave downtown and it would get real quiet. Then they could hear the birds singing, they could hear the animals, they could hear different things. They would always say one word every time I talked to them. They would say, it was just a magical time.
But to many who live in the area, the magic lives on as a single historical marker. Former resident Jason Egley saw it, prompting him to ask for more details.
And we're like, what in the world? There could have been elephants that were in our backyard.
Yeah, so that's just a little snippet there. If you check out this story at wpln.org/curious, you can see some of the photos of our reporter roaming through the neighborhood and looking at some of the things that remain, including the bear cave, which is like, as we understand it, it's sort of a natural cave type area that is still there, where apparently there was some kind of bear cage apparatus added to it. Andy Lane, who was in that story as well, actually ended up doing a children's book about the Glendale Park Zoo, which I think is just an incredible way to save and kind of activate history for future generations. So that story really kind of has it all. So that's what I do. This is part of what I do as a journalist when I'm not handling news and other things. We're working on Curious Nashville stories. I'm also just a neighborhood nerd, and I care about my neighborhood. So I try to do research that's applicable to my house and my block and my community. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. And I actually brought some of it. In fact, it was not until this morning when I was joking around with my wife about the name of this session, digging into your neighborhood history, where I realized I have literally dug into into the ground. And I found this in my yard, which is an old window weight, 5 pound, that I found in the garden. Does anybody know how window weight works? I don't exactly know, but we found on a string, right?
Yeah, when you lift the window up, it would balance in it and hold it.
There we go.
My mother had some.
Yeah, it was amazing when we found it. I thought I had found garbage, and instead I found something great. And we actually found 2 in the yard. And then these bottles. I brought a couple of them here. I've got a Listerine bottle from the 1930s and a Capadine for a headache bottle. Don't recommend you take Capadine, although apparently it was like the remedy of its day. We found these, my daughter and I, digging out in the backyard. We live in the path of the 2020 tornado, and there's a lot of uprooted trees. And when we were digging out there, a tree had come down and uprooted, and underneath that tree was a weird trove of these bottles. And we collected them. The one on the right there is like a olive oil, I believe, bottle. We were able to date these, by the way, by putting photos of them into Google reverse image search, which finds similar objects, and we were able to figure out that because they are not grooved, they predate screw tops, which means they were cork tops, which means they were from a certain era. So you can piece together the clues. But what I didn't know at the time, I was sort of like, why are these bottles here? Because there's just a house on the corner. There's a row of houses. But then my neighbor who lives on the corner house mentioned that their house was only built in like 2007, which I hadn't realized, and that they had heard that there used to be businesses on this corner. In Lockland Springs, there are many little corner businesses, right? Like you can think of like where Frothy Monkey is, or there used to be this florist that's now like an architecture shop on a corner. There's all sorts of little corner markets in Lockland Springs. I did not know, so on this map, this is my house. And I didn't know. I didn't know that 2 doors down had actually been a commercial corner until my neighbors mentioned that to me, and I went to the Sanborn fire maps, which is what we're looking at here, and I'll talk more about these in a bit. And these markings here, they tell you like what the buildings were made out of, and you can see the 4 on the corner are all like wedged, like it's a little commercial strip. Okay, so then I started looking for more information. Oh, there's a little zoom in. And the addresses. The other thing that I noted was that the addresses all had a fatherland address, not a 15th address, which is, again, just like a little thing you might need to keep on your radar when you're looking back, thinking about like you could, if I was searching for 15th, South 15th Street, I would have found nothing. But when I searched for the fatherland address, I started finding things. For example, I found a crime story from the 1950s when 3 of these corner markets had bricks thrown through the window. Not the best news to find going back, but still kind of interesting, and it included the names of these grocery stores at that time. Also found, oh man, the classifieds. The classifieds are so good. There were multiple auctions over the years because there ended up being like a shoe shine business. There ended up being a pharmacy. There ended up being a pharmacy at that corner. And was able to find auctions over the years of some of the things that kind of sheds a light on what was going on in that corner. I think I've got one more of those. Yeah. Oh, jukebox. There was a jukebox that was auctioned off from that corner at one point, which I found really fascinating. I did share all of this material to my neighbors. I was like, here's the address. Like, here's what you had over the decades. Okay, cool. Those are my examples. So I wanted to mention a couple of just mindset things before we get into some of the tools here. A lot of what I'm going to show you are online resources, and a lot of them are just things that I sort of work on like as a solo, just curious person. I have also worked on some like group projects, like with my neighborhood association. So one of the things I just want to mention is like, before you begin your research, you might want to just kind of figure out like, what is the scope of research I'm doing? Like, am I just tinkering on my house, on my property, on my block, or do you have bigger visions for like sharing this information? And one reason why I want you to kind of think about that at the front end, you might make different decisions about how you organize your information. Maybe you would set up like a shared Google Drive folder where you would share with other neighbors. Maybe you would find other neighbors who have special expertise. Like in my neighborhood, there are some folks who work for the Historical Commission who are really good at looking up architectural records and who know what the different architecture styles are that I don't know. So I would just encourage you to kind of like think about kind of what lane you're in. Again, and also when you're thinking about the expertise of your neighbors, that again can be a great way to build bonds as you do your project. The other thing that I want to urge you to do is to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? So like, meaning just get started. Like get started gathering string, gathering information, stockpiling it. whenever you get a spare moment, when you're feeling curious, just like get it, grab it, and hold on to it, and it will probably end up being valuable to you later. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna just tick through some of the research tools that I hope folks will be aware of. I realize that we've had more folks join us. Hopefully, like, these are kind of new to most of us in the room, but I'm sure some of them will be familiar. So let's go through them. Okay, we talked about the parcel viewer, the Metro parcel viewer. I get made fun of in my newsroom because I say that any day I get to look at the parcel viewer is a good day. But I do mean it. I'm gonna pull it up live real quick here and just show you how it works. Actually, let's do show of hands again. How many folks are familiar with the parcel viewer? Most. Okay, I'll just be really brief about it then. Let's see. Let me bring this over. Okay, Metro Parcel Viewer, it just has the property records for every single parcel in the county. And you can search by address by using the little search button, or you can just roam around on the map and click. I clicked on this random property on Rolling Mill Hill, and when you click View Parcel Details, it pops up all this information on the left side, including ownership history, property history, permit history, like if there were ever new things built, or requests for plumbing permits. There's often also, like if there's ever been disputes about codes or zoning issues, those are often in these records as well. And you can just click on them. This one has a short-term rental permit as well. So you can get this like wealth of information just by starting with the parcel viewer. And anything that is hyperlinked in blue, you can click on and it will immediately pull up that record. So if this works. Like here's the sale deed for that piece of property. And it will go back several sales. So you could learn a bunch about that place. Cool. Oh, Parcel Viewer has lots of other great stuff too. If you go up to the top corner here, you can look at aerial images year by year back for a couple decades. So you could see how something changes over time. Now, that's not going to take you very far back into history, but it's still really interesting. You can also set what layers you want on this map. You can kind of turn things off and on to make it look a little more approachable. Okay, cool. What are we going through here? Sanborn fire maps. I flashed one of those on the screen earlier. Just wanted to just give you a snapshot of how much information is on a Sanborn fire map. Like it will show you where windows and doors were. It will show you whether there was a garage. It will tell you whether it was made out of brick or out of wood or out of something else. It will tell you, I love this little symbol over here, a brick chimney. Like if there was a brick chimney, it will be drawn on the map and it will tell you where it was on the property. Love the Sanborn fire maps. I'll show you one. So you can find these, they're kind of sprinkled around the internet, and the Sanborn fire maps would be updated every few years or decades so that you can go see like the 1888 set, and then there's like the 1914 set, and then there's like the 1952 set or whatever it is. But there is a nice set on the Library of Congress website where you can just flip through the pages and find your little pocket of the world and take a look. Yeah. Okay. What else do I want to show you? I want to show you Tennessee Electronic Library. This is through the State Library and Archives. I'm just going to kind of tick through this. One thing I would note is that they do have a digitized archive of the Tennessean. That's pretty helpful if you like encounter the paywall or something like that. This would be a way to look for that information in another way. Also want to show you another, I guess it's a subset of the State Library and Archives, which is their Tennessee Virtual Archive, and this photo searching tool, which is unbelievably fun. You can search any old word you can think of, like locomotive or Lockland, and I found, like this old 1914 Lockland school at the corner of 18th and Lillian. I don't believe this building is there anymore. And it will tell you everything they know about this picture. Yeah. I guess we could try this. Does someone want to throw out like a neighborhood name or something? Or a word? What do we want to look up? Woodbine. All right. Let's see what we get. Press at the Woodbine Racetrack. By the way, keep in mind this is a statewide resource. Let's see. Oh, cool. 1956. I'm not sure if is this Woodbine here in Nashville or not? This is Toronto, Canada. What is this doing in here? Who knows? All right. Not a great hit. Let's see what this one is. This is Whitsett. Here we go. H.H. Whitsett Store and Woodbine Post Office. Yeah. So that ought to be right. It doesn't have a date in here, which is a little unusual, but I'm just here to inspire you to go looking and fishing in this archive. I don't know. You can find some great stuff in there. Cool. Okay, what else we got? Put in a little plug for the Metro Archives and the Nashville Public Library. They also have a great repository of material that has just like expanded in recent years. Here's just a snapshot of some of them. I don't know, what should we click on here? Oh, there's the 1908 Atlas. Oh, I don't know, let's look. Let's just see what we find. A group of people gather in front of a circus sideshow. Sign me up. 1931. Okay. At the Tennessee State Fair. So I'm doing this on the fly just to show you, like, it's literally just sitting out there, and it's searchable, and it's fun to find these little nuggets. So you can take your, prominent names from your neighborhood, or just your street, an address, if it's, an address or an institution, a prominent site, and just throw it in there and see what you get. Yeah, cool. A couple other notes. The Metro Archives is also definitely worth going to physically in person. And there are two resources I want to mention. I mean, there are many resources down there, plus the archivists will help you. But one is the city directories, which was just this annual book. I mean, it's like a phone book. It's like a phone book, if you know what a phone book is. But it's like a phone book, but what it does is it just listed, and it just lists the address, who lived there, and what their profession was. And then, I think, is it by address?
The cross index of the streets, you can your face in the back.
Yes. So, I don't know. Like, if you're looking at your neighborhood or your block, you can just go see, like, who lived there and what they did for work. And one thing that we discovered, like, in Lockland Springs, I guess this was probably common knowledge to a lot of people, but it was news to me, was, like, if you flash back a couple generations, like, we think now about, like, dadus, right? Like, little tenants, living on property these days, or short-term rentals. Well, like, there was all sorts of those sorts of arrangements several generations ago, where you'd have like the main family, and then you'd have like a tenant, and you could get this great list of like the professions of everyone who was there. Anyway, so the city directories are great, and then there's another thing called question.
Yeah, how far back does it go? Our house is circa 1895.
I don't have the answer off the top of my head. I mean, I've definitely looked at stuff from like the 1930s and 40s. So there you have it. So yeah, definitely into the 1800s. The other cool resource they have there, which is not going to be like place specific, but it's these things called the annual yearbooks. And it's like all of the all of the Nashville city agencies would just do an annual report every year about everything they did. Like all the sewers they added, and all the trash, how much trash they picked up, and all of this stuff. So if you were interested in a particular era and just kind of getting an idea for what the city was like at that time, you could just go flip through the annual yearbook, and kind of get yourself like a little mental bearings of like what was the infrastructure like essentially. So would recommend those at the Metro Archives as well. Yes.
The things you just mentioned, the directory, the yearbook, are they available at the library?
So they're at the Metro Archives, which is within the downtown public library. Yes. And I don't believe they're digitized, so you got to go take a look at them. But they're available on the shelf, like in the archives area, which is on the 3rd floor, I guess. Yeah.
If you have access to an Ancestry.com account, the city directories are actually digitized on Ancestry, but it's very hard. It's trickier to find them. But once you do, it's a pretty complete set, and they are searchable.
That's really good. That's good to know. Yeah.
Is it possible to like submit documents to the archive? Like if you have like older family type documents that you want to be preserved?
I don't know. I mean, they certainly do take like sort of large collections. I don't know if they would take small collections. Maybe Carol knows.
You know, you've got two choices of where you can put them. You can put them at the State Archives, which is there at the Bicentennial Mall across from the State Museum. If you've never been in there, just take yourself on a self-guided tour. They have free parking all day, and the staff is young and very energetic, and they will take things like church records, personal old pictures. They enjoy getting that kind of thing. The Metro Archives will take those things as well. They too have a really young, energetic staff who are excellent trained researchers. The problem with going to the public library is that at 90 minutes in the parking room, you get 90 minutes of free parking, and if you stay 91, then you're going to get you can't stay longer than 90 minutes unless you drive out one door and turn around.
Oh, we got the pro tip here. Not saying I've ever done it, but yeah. Cool. So I'm going to keep ticking through a few things. I want to mention just one note about the Register of Deeds. I talked about the property records earlier and the parcel viewer. The parcel viewer only goes back so far. And when I was doing research on my house, which was built around 1937, I say around because it's still a little bit murky in the history. But just one thing I wanted to point out. I wonder if I have is there a laser thing on this? Maybe not. Okay. I just want to show you one note about these property records. I guess I'll walk over here. Okay. This little thing right here says book and page. Okay. So at the top of most property records for these property sales, you're going to see the book number and the page number. Then at the bottom, or like within the document, you will see something that looks like this, which says, being the same property conveyed sort of previously as logged in book 1371, page 375. And what that tells you is where the previous sale record is. So if you're going back further than like the online digital stuff, you kind of have to do this like linkage thing where you look at the property sale and you look at where the previous sale was, and then you go to that book and you look at it. And then on there, it will tell you where the previous sale was. So then you go to that book. So you can walk back in history of that property to find the older information. It's kind of fun. These books are like, these big old dusty, books that you're opening up at the Register of Deeds office. But that is just someone, I don't know, I guess someone at the office told me how to do this one time, so passing on that little tip. Just going to put in a plug for newspapers.com. You do have to have an account there. I actually don't recall if there's a cost.
There, and you just go onto the research tab on the home homepage.
All right. Sounds like there is free access into newspapers.com, which is really just an old archival newspaper search tool. And what I really like about it is that it's actually searching like the scanned images of the newspaper. So you kind of get to see it kind of like in situ, right? Like with the photos and the captions or the breakout boxes or whatever other things they had. So this was just one that we used recently when I was doing a story about 440 and Brightwood Avenue and some quirky history with the Battle of Nashville monument, or I guess the Peace Monument. I was gonna maybe show everyone what that looks like. Yeah, so basically, I mean, it's just a really simple little search box where you're searching your keyword, you're telling them what place you want to look. Let's do Whitsett in Nashville. Let's just see what it finds. Oh, and then you can narrow in your date range. So like if you're looking for a certain time period. So like here's all the mentions of Whitsett from 1927 to 19, whatever I have plugged in there. And then you can just click on the story and look at it, and it takes you right to it. I guess in this case, it's an obituary. Whitsett is a name that we've been researching lately for a story in the Woodbine area because it's spelled with an I sometimes and with an E other times, and someone wanted to know why. So that's why that name is on my mind. Cool. Okay, just to recap, these are the tools we went through. I'm not going to belabor it. Parcel Viewer, Sanborn Fire Maps, the State Library, the Metro Archives, the Register of Deeds. I guess I didn't mention the local history books. Ridley Wills, who I mentioned at the very top of the conversation here, it may even be two. He's written several local history books, but one of them is the story of like every road name in Nashville and why it's named that. Is that a double two books maybe? It's just one. It's just called like Nashville street names. I don't know. I just wanted to mention that one. And of course, there's also the Images of America series. I think that's what it's called. You know, that's where like you'll see those like at the grocery store, little like neighborhood books have photos. I think those are worth looking at too. But the Ridley Wills book is really good if you just want to know why your street is named the way it is. Okay, let me have any other questions about the online stuff? Yes.
What is the exact website address for Parcel Viewer?
Let's find out. maps.nashville.gov/parcel viewer. When I type in maps to my internet browser these days, it actually pulls this up before it pulls up Google Maps. I have turned the corner, and I now more often, I guess, go to the Parcel Viewer than I do Google Maps. Badge of honor. Glad I made it.
One other thing.
Yes.
If I may, if you need to go deeper in a property history than the parcel maps, or further back than the parcel maps will give you, and I think it's accessible from somewhere in this, on the Metro site, but I don't remember exactly where. There is a subscription service that you can, it's $50 a month, so you have to decide whether you want it. But if you have like one thing you want to research, you can just buy it for a month, and it will give you access online to a scanned image of every deed, basically, that ever has been done in Nashville since its beginning. And you can do that search back through the property books online. So that walk back that he was talking about, you can actually go, oh, now I need to go back to book 110, page 73. And you go back to that and you look at what it says the previous sale was. And I've gone back in one search to like, it's pretty cool, you get to these handwritten deeds from the 1890s. And you can now do that online for basically the cost of $50.
Pro tip number 2 or number 6 that we've gotten today. I love it. Yeah. So you can decide whether that's worth the investment. Cool. So I did want to talk about just a couple other, I promised I would encourage you to also not just do computer research. So one thing that I've found really valuable when I look back into the history that I kind of think we should be doing more of today is just going out there and sort of inventorying what's around us. Like in my neighborhood, for example, when they did like a, historic neighborhood, like when they went to register for the National Register of Historic Places, they had to just inventory everything that was out there in whatever year, in the 80s, I think, when they did that. So it becomes this really valuable little trove. Like, it's sort of like you don't know, we can just look around our neighborhoods now and be a little bit bored or just a little bit complacent about it. But I think there's something to be said about just getting out there and documenting. And I'll show you some other examples about some before and after photos in a few minutes that will maybe further enhance this. But it's just fun to go out there and look. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce that by saying we've been in Nashville for 40 years. And now when we go to the neighborhood, we see vacant lots that were just cleared. It's like, what was there?
What was there? Yeah.
You know, you just assume so much, and then when it's gone,
Yep.
it's gone.
Yes, exactly. Another thing, I mean, you can, again, it's never quite good enough, but you can also, if you didn't know, in Google Street View, you can go back in time in some places and look at old images. I can't remember exactly where that little tool is, but if you go on to Street View and then you want to look back a few years, you can sometimes do that. But I would encourage folks to just get out there. Like, you often just don't know. I don't know. It doesn't come to life on the computer screen or on a map or even a terrain map. Like, it just helps to go out there and see. Like, you might find an old stone wall. You might find a bear cave in the Glendale Park neighborhood. Like, you just don't know until you get out there and kind of look around, and you can kind of like feel the proximity or the geography. So let's get out there. Obviously, I think oral histories, I don't even know why I'm saying it. It's sort of obvious, but you need to capture those before it's too late with, your family members or your neighbors, your friends. So you have to be intentional about capturing that material. There are many great tools out there to sort of guide you through how to do an oral history, or like kind of what flow of questions to ask, that sort of thing. Even NPR and StoryCorps have some little how-tos. They even have a little app that you can get that just sort of prompts you through it, so you're kind of having a conversation with your loved one or your neighbor. So again, I'm just a proponent of documenting and capturing as we go. Another version of that would be neighbor Q&As. In Lockland Springs, we've done do we call it neighbor to neighbor? We may have called it neighbor to neighbor, ironically. But again, just trying to build bridges by we did it in our newsletter for our neighborhood. We would intentionally interview some longtime residents who had been there 30, 40, 50 years, and also some newcomers to make sure that we're kind of getting a representative cross-section of folks. I wanted to show everyone this. This is something I'm still curious about in my neighborhood. This was something called Spring Park, which was apparently like 1 block over from my house. And it was apparently like the greatest park in the 1880s. And literally, I mean, I'm going to connect a few dots here. So this is between, if you know the area, between 14th and 15th, between Fatherland and like Holly. There's kind of this strange depression. Like the terrain is unusual. But there's also like apartments. There's like an apartment complex there now, and then there's housing. And like, I cannot imagine a park, or like, I guess it was also kind of a zoo attraction. I don't even know. I don't know, it's just like there's like this, you don't know what you can't see right now when you're walking around. So now like every time I'm walking over there, I'm like, so where was this? Like, what was the geography here? Anyway, I need to do more research on this one, but I found this, I guess, when I was searching for Fatherland Street back in, anyway.
What was the name of it?
Spring Park. Let me see. Between Fatherland Holly 13th and 14th was the park of Nashville in the early 80s. Now this was from like 1920s, so I think they're referencing the 1880s, I think. Here is shown a small artificial lake that was one of the attractive features of the park. Wow, where'd that go? All right, cool. Anyway, so more to come on that. So I thought we could also talk about like what to do with the research once you've gotten it. And I want to be mindful of time. We could brainstorm a couple more things for if anybody has a particular query or wants to test one of these tools, we can try to do that too. So I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. I mentioned like a newsletter. In Lockland Springs, we've had The Fountain, which is a newsletter that looks sort of like this, where we put out information about history and about individual properties. We do a home tour. We have historically done a home tour in Lockland Springs, which would give us a reason to look up the history of like 8 to 10 properties each year. And this is how we would present it. And very much drawn from like the city directories and a little bit of an emphasis on architecture as well. I want to talk a little bit about social media examples. I've gotten really into this feed lately, Old Hickory History. It's just someone in Old Hickory who I don't even know who it is, who's been sharing these historical photos and tidbits and old articles. I love the hyperlocal, like, I don't have many connections to Old Hickory, but I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna check this out because they're sharing these lively things. Yeah. What else we got here? Oh, let me step back one step. This is Nashville History X on Instagram. Let me double check that. Where are my notes? Okay, yeah, Nashville History X is the feed. I think I have these on a slide that I'll show you in a minute if you want to write it down. They're sharing a lot of old archival newspaper photos, often very relevant to current events. Like if something is happening in our community, they'll dip back and find something from the past. Of course, David Ewing also does that with the Nashville I Wish I Knew. So you can check those out. I wanted to give another shout out to the Metro Archives on their Facebook page. I think they do a really good job of like bringing the past to life. Like they'll do little trivia, they'll do you recognize this place? They'll do before and after photos. So if you're not following the Metro Nashville Archives, I think it's a very hip place to be, and has like, often they'll put out like, hey, does anybody remember this? And they'll get like 50 comments of like people just pouring out their memories, and I was there and I remember doing this and da 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 da. So I really like what they're doing in terms of bringing this to life. Here's the list. Oh. All right. Does anybody need these on the screen any longer? Sorry if I'm a little bit scattered. I did have end up having a little less time to prepare this week than I thought I might. Okay. Also want to give you an idea of potentially presenting your research, your information, like at something like a gallery show. And there are a lot of galleries in Nashville that have done kind of local-centric events, parties, shows. This one, I just wanted to give a shout out. This is not in Nashville, but down in Columbia, Tennessee, the West 7th Company is like a little gallery space that is completely dedicated to historical photos of Columbia. And they have 1 million photos that they are working through. I don't even know the whole story. And they also, so in addition to doing these gallery openings in real life for everyone to come see, they put these great collections online. Is today Mule Day, by the way? I think today is Mule Day. They've got a ton of Mule Day stuff. In fact, I'll just show you a quick, I think I pulled up a clip. see if this works.
We have really just scratched the surface, and when you deal with this many photos, and there are more than 1 million.
More than 1 million?
More than 1
honest
million.
million, not a exaggeration million.
Not an exaggeration million. We have boxes and boxes that we have yet to even open. And each one of these has envelopes, and the envelopes are stuffed in, and inside the envelopes are negatives, very thin, so you just don't know how many negatives are in there.
Of course, just looking at and cataloging all those negatives could be a life's work for David, Joel, and Kim, but not work really, a treasure hunt.
So here, when you get to this truck,
Treasure hunt, love it, yes. A strong agree. Also wanted to mention a project like, you could consider approaching a media outlet to maybe partner with or to do a story about the work that you've done, local research. I also just I love this project that Larry McCormick had done at the Tennessean, where he took the archive of civil rights photos and went out to those exact places and shot current photos and then overlaid them to sort of bring those historical moments to life. And I had looked through these archival photos many times while I was at the Tennessean, and I had looked for clues in them, and I had done reporting on them. But when Larry put these together like this, so then you can see exactly what is there today, it added such a new layer for me. This one I thought was really resonant as well at the Buena Vista School, overlaying the first day of integrated schooling there, with a more contemporary photo as well. There's a whole, if you look this up, he did a whole series of these. He also did them with Civil War sites as well. So I thought that was pretty awesome. I don't have a link to it, but there's also a free tool online through the Knight, with a K, the Knight Journalism Lab, that is a before and after slider. You've probably seen these on news websites, where you can put the before photo and after photo together, it overlays them, and then you can sort of slide back and forth to see the old and the new. It's a free tool that's out there that you could just put in your two photos. It'll give you a little link. You could put it out on social media, or put it on a website. I'm sorry I don't have that link. Well,
Did you say the name again?
yeah, let me just pull it up. Let's do it. Juxtapose, that's what they call it. Okay, Juxtapose JS, some kind of coder thing. So it creates these little tools for you. Let me see if they've got, here we go. So this is where you'll see storm damage before and after, or just important historical moments layered over. Cool. So if you want to do your own version of what Larry did very laboriously, you could do it like this. Okay. So just to recap some ideas for how you might present your information, you could have a newsletter. Oh, I didn't mention shared photo albums. I'm obsessed with Google Photo, just shared photo albums where you could invite all of your neighbors into one photo album to put things in there. So this is, for example, my daughter's preschool. They put out an album each week, and then all of the parents or the teachers can add to that album and then look at how the week went. Anyway, again, but this is something you'd want to decide on the front end, hey, let's create a shared repository where we can all contribute or something. Or if you were going to do a photo walk and try to document your neighborhood, just set up that folder, get everyone on it, everyone contributes, and you've got a great resource, and then you can make that public. We talked about social media. We talked about having a gallery show or a media partnership. Last thing I'm going to say, my 3 storytelling tips. Make the history relevant to today. When I talk about the Glendale Park Zoo, or the trees on that North Nashville neighborhood on Buchanan, if you're just doing kind of a book report, or if you're just doing the history and you're not giving people the current day landmarks, to go out there and see it and experience it, or to kind of do that, to make that leap, I think it's often really static and it's like maybe harder to engage with. So I recommend you try to make the history relevant to today. As I said at the top, I think you can use these kinds of projects to build connections, especially between old timers and newcomers. And you can often find really amazing expertise within your neighborhood. I'm sure you'll find like graphic designers, or maybe someone with some audio skills, or who wants to help you record your oral histories or whatnot. So I think you can really build connections by doing this work together. And consider a live event also, like, just really brings things to life when you can get people together to look at the things, to talk about the things. And final tip there is, if you do a live event, also be ready to record and capture that event as well. Because that's when they show up and they just start gushing, and you want to be ready to get that as well. So like in our world, for journalists, we'll literally have recorders there. We'll have a little station. We're like, hey, come on over here and let's record that memory real quick. You can also just do that very DIY. An iPhone voice memo recording is really, really, really good these days. You don't need professional gear. Just start rolling. Yeah, cool. So I think that's all I'm going to stumble through. If you have any questions about any of this, please reach out. I'm happy to take up an individual question, or just point you to a resource. And I'm happy to be helpful, because I like trying to solve these little mysteries and queries. But we could take a couple minutes. When are we done?
We have about 11:20.
Okay, so we could take a few minutes for questions and or on the fly little research prompts. If anybody wants to throw something into the photo archive or click on a property record. Yeah.
The clip you played out of Columbia, the voice sounded like it was from Tennessee Crossroads.
That was a Tennessee Crossroads clip.
Tennessee Crossroads has been running for 30 years. Do they have any kind of easily searchable index about what their shows are, or anything like that?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I mean, I do find their stuff on YouTube a lot. Yeah. And in fact, I find so much stuff on YouTube. I know we think of Google search as our number one search. I would put YouTube pretty much number two. You just never know what you're going to find out there. So I find a ton of Tennessee Crossroads. They have a huge repository of things they've done over the years. Yeah.
So this has been awesome in terms of what the breadth is of methods we can use. If you wanted to use neighborhood history as a way to help your neighborhood get more excited about itself as a neighborhood, would you recommend, and is it even feasible, to start with a Curious Nashville thing that would get people interested? And if it is, how do you find that?
Are you talking about literally a Curious Nashville story, or are you saying like your version of it?
Yes,
Yeah.
the kind of thing you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the easiest version I would say of that would be kind of like what you see in some of those social media accounts, where it's like who knows about this place or this photo or this address, or does anybody know more about this particular corner of our neighborhood, or even just a broader call out, has anybody been doing research about their property? If anybody knows any metal detectorists, have a metal detectorist day and have that person come over and roam some backyards. I actually have a friend coming in town later this month. I cannot wait for him to bring his metal detector and check out our yard so we can find more window weights and Matchbox cars. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, I do think that questions are extremely motivating to people and neighbors. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're just beginning to sort of
Yeah.
clean up.
Mm-hmm.
So there's there's that family information, and then Charlotte Avenue that runs close, there's Davidson family history there. I've been able to find this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, cemetery research is like a whole nother wing One thing I will note is that Metro, with grant funding, is working on a really big cataloging of cemeteries right now. And I think they have sort of off and on for a while.
They've got them all inventoried, and they
Okay.
probably got those out there. I'm sure they do, because Fletchcoat was in
Mhm.
charge of that colonial name.
Yeah.
And they gave it to Metro, and it's on a database, but you need to call the Metro Historical Commission and ask them how to get to the database.
Yeah. Yeah. Metro. Yeah. I would say, I mean, I would never discourage someone from doing research, but like on cemeteries, I think there probably is a huge amount of material kind of at the ready. So yeah, Metro Historical Commission is the one I think leading that grant project. Yeah.
Yes, regarding neighborhoods, I'm particularly interested in going back into the history and looking at like the developers,
Mhm.
of course, of the older neighborhoods, as well as any charters that might exist. Can you give a lead on charters of organizations or developers on neighborhoods or organizations?
Yeah. I don't know if that's my forte. I'll take a swing at this though. I mean, one thing that you will find when you start to go back into the property records is like you'll find before a community was like subdivided, there will usually be like a large property owner name that it's sort of known for, if this is making sense. Like in my neighborhood, it was like the Lindsley Home Place. I don't remember who the Lindsley, I don't know who Lindsley was. I know that name is prominent here. But like before all of our streets were subdivided for homes, it was like the Lindsley plots or whatever. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but like I think finding that name of like what that land, who sort of had that land, is actually even still on like my current property record now. Like it's not buried information. It's like,
Yeah, I didn't find it just through the regular
okay.
channels.
It might be a matter of going back a few steps back in those property the deeds, potentially. I'm also happy to look up an address right here and see if we can find something. Just like a street you want me to look up?
Yes, it's looking up Doverside.
Say it again?
Doverside.
Doverside. Is that all one word?
Yes.
Do you want to throw out a numerical address with that?
3329.
Okay. So I'm going to look back here at the ownership history, and I'm going to scroll to the bottom. So I can see the 1963 sale is like the oldest one that's digitized right here. Should we see what it says? I don't know. Oh, wow. It's a little hard to read. The plan of Parkwood Estates being part of the property conveyed to Gaines Home Building Corporation. Yeah. I don't know. Is any of that new?
No, it's
No.
not new.
Yeah.
That's my dead end.
That's the dead end. Yeah, so what I would think is you would need to go back then to this book 3572, page 364 would be the prior one, to go one step back or further steps back from there. I think that would be a step, which you could either do electronically, you could ask Mark about that, or you could go down to the Register of Deeds office and do that physical book hopping.
By the way, Karen Johnson, Register of Deeds, has a table here.
That's true.
Today, so go talk to her.
Yeah.
Karen is awesome, and her staff is terrific.
Question?
Apart from the book and page and all that, and apart from all the new things, we're used to clicking on a blue hyperlink and pulling up the SP. But before all of this, people had to do things by paper. And you could go to the planning department and you need to bend their ear to have somebody spend some time because they are so overwhelmed. But they have accordion files in their file room that go way, way, way back. And the accordion files are stuffed with paper that are the blueprints and the letters back and forth between the city and the developer and so forth. And I'm not sure, everyone is different, they don't have history in there, but there's probably something in there about the large tract that was divided by the James people into the smaller tracts. I have no idea how to get to that particular file, but maybe Ozzy or somebody at the, somebody else Ozzy, can help you with what is available there, because Ozzy's new.
And there are certainly a lot of limitations to what's digitized. I was actually talking to a private investigator friend last week about some of these types of things, and he was just like, I'm just going to go down to the courthouse and look at all the... I mean, he's just like, he's not satisfied with the digital records. So if you're really on the hunt, like, because, you know, they're going to digitize, like, the thing they kind of have to digitize, but, like, if there's sort of ancillary stuff, which is often really good stuff, like, you probably got to go look for it. One of the reasons why I was able to learn about my house, which I had been told was built in 1936, was that there was actually a legal dispute about the land between like one of the parents had been deceased and left the property to some children, and then there was a legal dispute about it before it was subdivided and then before it was developed. So the fact that I had like a 1936 lawsuit that I could go look at was like extremely valuable. So as you can imagine, a lot of information and a lot of argumentation was put into there about that land and what it was worth and all that sort of thing. So, but I had to go to the Metro Archives to review that lawsuit.
One more thing, and that is the real estate developers, some of them are still around. Reese Smith, who did River Plantation and so forth, passed away 20 years ago, but Reese III is still there. He's moved from Green Hills down to Franklin, but he's still there. And I bet if you call up Reese Smith, you can find something out about the things that Horry and Smith have developed over the years. And Bill Freeman's around, Jimmy Webb has passed away, but some of the things that Freeman Webb did over the years. But I think if you talk to the real estate community, some of the old timers who are still around, they can give you some guidance.
Yeah. We are just up here at time. I'm happy to chat if anybody wants to come up afterward, or you can reach me any of these ways, and would be happy to noodle your neighborhood history mysteries that you've got. But thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. This has been an incredible workshop. All kinds of new and old information. So thank you. But don't leave yet. I'm going to ask you to just complete a very brief evaluation and maybe another round of applause for Tony.